It is wonderful to be here with you this evening. Even though we are separated by distance, I know that we come together as we search for understanding about our world and about our place in our world. Our topic tonight, finding enlightenment in times of darkness, is quite a large topic, and it elicits many questions, some of which may be, from where does darkness originate? What do times of darkness mean for us as human beings? How do we survive these times of darkness? What does enlightenment mean? And how do we find enlightenment when we feel surrounded by darkness? There are, of course, many questions that pertain to this topic, but these questions at least give us a platform from which to begin our discussion. As human beings, we all experience times of darkness. We all do. These times can be initiated by something external, the death of a loved one, a natural disaster, or a pandemic. They can also be initiated internally by things such as a milestone birthday, or just getting to a place where we feel like life doesn't have meaning anymore. However, what we are facing in the world right now seems even worse than these external and internal events. It feels like it's all of those together and even more. We are living in times of tremendous uncertainty. It is uncomfortable for some and extremely distressing for many. It feels as if we are surrounded by darkness with no light in sight. This feeling may even be exacerbated now as we move into the fall and winter, nature's time of darkness. The things we see occurring in our world today, divisiveness, injustice, violence, and so on, cause many of us to feel concerned, anxious, confused, uncertain, and even afraid. As human beings, these feelings are ones that make us want to hide under the bed or hide in the closet, just avoid, hide from it. We feel helpless and we don't know what to do. Our human psyches don't really like feeling helpless. And so what happens is that we have these feelings of helplessness, and on top of them, we put anger. Because anger is an emotion of action. It is an emotion of action. And frequently considered a secondary emotion, it gives us the energy and courage to stand up for ourselves, to protect ourselves, to do whatever it is that we need to do. Emotions are not good or bad. Anger is not good or bad. Emotions just are. They are things that we feel as human beings. They are part of this human existence that we have. It is not the feeling that we might consider positive or negative, but rather the action that stems from the feeling. So if someone becomes angry and their actions are harmful or destructive, we may definitely consider that negative. On the other hand, if anger allows us to protect ourselves, to stand up and fight for ourselves and for others, well, that may be very positive. From my perspective, one response leads us to darker, deeper levels, while the other response, it can lead us out of the darkness. Well, this brings up a couple of issues, of course, right? Everything brings up issues. So what does it mean to move out of the darkness? And second, how do we make decisions about what is helpful or harmful? What is positive or negative? That is, what ethic guides us in these directions? What ethic guides us in these decisions? Let's talk about darkness first for a little bit. Very few people are truly comfortable in the dark. We may think of children as being afraid of the dark, but in fact, it is estimated that 11% of the adult population is afraid of the dark. Why? Briefly, it's because there is a fear of the unknown in the dark. We can't see what might be there. And what might be there is potentially life-threatening. Isn't that what we're experiencing in our world today? It may not be physical darkness, but there is much that is unknown, much that we can't see or understand. And these things may threaten our security, our safety. They may threaten our way of life or our expectations about what life should be. These are the type of things that we may consider frightening. If we believe that life is a spiritual journey, and I think most of us do perceive it in that way, then we also perceive that our journey is one of conscious growth and expansion. Every experience we have provides us with an opportunity for movement on the spiritual path. Even darkness. What we need then is a paradigm shift in our perspective about darkness. Darkness provides us with an opportunity for growth, which is what we say we want, isn't it? We say we want to grow. We say we want to walk the path. Darkness is giving us this opportunity, even if it is a movement into the unknown and is really somewhat frightening. The darkness that we see in our world today is giving each one of us a tremendous opportunity for growth and expansion. It is providing us with a huge challenge. Will we accept that challenge? Will we accept the challenge of using the darkness to bring light into the world? No doubt about it. This is a challenge that requires strength and courage. Strength and courage that stem from deep within us. It also requires trust and faith because we are stepping into the unknown, aren't we? The esoteric teachings tell us that the universe and all within it are moving and growing toward the inevitable, the conscious awareness of our ultimate unity. Therefore, we know that even when things seem to be at their worst, at their darkest, the universe continues its inexorable movement in this direction. This esoteric philosophy, this teaching, is a philosophy of hope. So, will we trust? Will we reach deep within ourselves and find the strength and courage that we need? Will we accept the challenge? Well, perhaps we should add a few words here about this challenge. What are we being challenged to do? From a broad perspective, we are being challenged to change the world. Changing the world, however, requires that we change ourselves. And this is our biggest challenge. Move forward into the unknown and transform ourselves. Let me say that again. Move forward into the unknown and transform ourselves. It is in this way that we transform the world. A few minutes ago, I talked about feelings, the feelings that many of us are experiencing today. These feelings that range from those of helplessness, like insecurity, fear, anxiety, uncertainty, to the secondary emotion of anger. We talked about the fact that anger is a secondary emotion. It is not negative in and of itself. It just is. The actions that stem from anger, however, may be classified as positive or negative, good or bad. Well, this leads us very quickly into a discussion about what is helpful and what is harmful, what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. Words and their connotations cause a great deal of confusion for us as human beings. How do we wade through this confusion? How do we determine what's right and what's wrong? From my perspective, we can determine right versus wrong, harmful versus helpful, by looking at our ethics. As individuals who strive to live their beliefs and walk the spiritual path, our ethics may look somewhat different than the ethics of many others. And of course, each one of us will have a slightly different focus. Our ethics tell us what we stand for in every situation. They provide guidance regarding our thoughts, words, and actions. But let's be very specific. The ethics of many of us probably include a belief in the ultimate unity of all beings, and thereby a responsibility to bring that unity into the conscious awareness of others. And our ethics likely also include the concept of self-responsibility, including the responsibility to evolve spiritually, because our spiritual evolution moves all of humanity forward on its spiritual journey. These statements are very similar to the ethical standard of the Theosophical Society in America. It holds that our every action, feeling, and thought affects all other beings, and that each of us is capable of and responsible for contributing to the benefit of the whole. In other words, we are all responsible for everything we think, say, and do. And we are responsible for contributing to the benefit of the whole. We are interconnected beings. We can't separate ourselves out. Self-responsibility and working to benefit all of life. These are ethics by which we can live. They're a high standard, and I think most of us try to live them every single day. And even if we don't always succeed, we continue to try to achieve this high ethic. How then does our ethic help with this whole finding enlightenment in times of darkness idea? How does it help us with personal transformation and transformation of the world in which we live? What do we see in the world today that makes us feel as if we are living in a time of darkness? Divisiveness, systemic injustice, unconscious bias, just to name a few. We're confronted with lies and half-truths from almost every direction. So we are also trying to discern truth on both temporal and eternal levels of reality. How do we deal with divisiveness? The Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary defines divisiveness as creating disunity or dissension. We definitely see this today. There seems to be more division and less unity than there has been in many, many years. Today, we see our country divided in a myriad of ways, politically, health-wise, socioeconomically, religiously, and so on. It just continues. Friends are divided, families are divided, married couples are divided because of their differences in perspective and belief. Clearly, supporting disunity is against the ethical principles of many who walk the spiritual path. What are we doing to bring about unity? How are we putting our ethical principles into place? These are important questions. We need to ask ourselves, what are we doing? How are we practicing our ethics? Well, we can certainly look at how we might be adding to the divisiveness and how we can move toward unity as guided by our ethics. A simple example. Regardless of your political affiliation, have you ever felt animosity or annoyance or frustration with someone that holds a different viewpoint? Likely you have. Most of us have. But when we do this, we are adding to the divisiveness. Did you ever think about it that way? When we think about someone else's statements or actions or beliefs with our own thoughts, whether spoken or kept internally, that's ridiculous. That's dumb. Or, as unfortunately I've been known to say, that is so stupid. What have we done? We have separated ourselves from that person. We have added to the division. However, we can change our perspective and either think or say, I disagree. I disagree. But I honor your right to your own opinion. Sometimes we are pushed so far we can't even do that. But what we can do is surround the other person with white light and wish them well on their way. In this way, we are sending out energy and thoughts that are supportive and unifying. That's our ethic. What do our ethics tell us about systemic injustice? A little aside here, I realize that not everyone accepts that there is systemic injustice in our world. My response? I respectfully disagree, but I honor your right to your opinion. I firmly and categorically believe that there is injustice in almost every system within our culture. Our ethics call upon us to take responsibility for ourselves. This means that we must be willing to look at the various systems. We must look objectively. Sometimes we may have to look very deeply, while at other times we might not have to look very far at all to find that systemic injustice, inequality, discrimination. Once we have found it, it is incumbent upon us to work toward change. Our ethics tell us that every living being in the world is ultimately united. We are all one. A basic esoteric teaching. Therefore, injustice toward one person is injustice toward every person. Unconscious bias. This is another issue that is taking center stage in our world today. Many people will say very quickly that they're not biased, or racist, or ageist, or classist, or genderist, or any other kind of ist. Yet, we are unconsciously conditioned to believe any number of things. J. Krishnamurti, in The Urgency to Change, writes, "We are conditioned, physically, nervously, mentally, by the climate we live in and the food we eat, by the culture in which we live, by the whole of our social, religious, and economic environment, by our experience, by education, and by family pressures and influences. All these are the factors which condition us. Our conscious and unconscious responses to all the challenges of our environment, intellectual, emotional, outward and inward, all these are the action of conditioning. Language is conditioning. All thought is the action, the response of conditioning." Powerful statement. He is telling us, as you know, that our every response is based upon our conditioning. It is unrealistic to say that one does not have unconscious bias. We all have it. And it is essential that we become aware that it exists within us and begin to identify it. Well, obviously that isn't as simple as it seems, or as it might seem, because it is unconscious, meaning we are not conscious of it. But we must become conscious. And we do this by observing ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and most importantly, reactions that occur automatically. Those thoughts that pop into our head. And we start to think, where did that come from? Where did that come from? So a simple example. Have you ever been in traffic and found yourself behind a very slow car? What did you think or say? I know that I have thought and sometimes said out loud something like, "Okay, Grandpa, get out the way." Silly statement and seemingly harmless, but it is unconscious bias. Bias that old people, of which I am now one, are slow drivers. What about this one? You're walking down the street and someone is walking towards you. Have you ever crossed the street so that you don't have to walk past someone that you think could be dangerous? Probably you have. Most of us have. What made you think that person was dangerous? Obviously, if they were carrying some type of weapon and acting aggressively, well, they may have been dangerous. But chances are, if they were just walking down the sidewalk like you, they weren't. But what unconsciously made you think that they could be dangerous? Dangerous enough to cross the street. Something to consider. Again, our ethics tell us that we are responsible for our thoughts, our actions, and words, that we are a part of the whole. We must once again look deeply within ourselves to find and bring unconscious bias into the light. Once we are aware of our own bias, we are less likely to participate in it. I don't know if I believe that it ever really goes away, but I do know it becomes easier and easier to identify and then to move away from. Most of us are on this spiritual journey, hoping to learn the ultimate truths of the universe. The motto of the Theosophical Society is, "There is no religion higher than truth." This motto tells us that truth, with a capital T, is more important than religion, more important than almost anything. In today's world, we are confronted with lies and half-truths almost daily, and from almost every direction. If we value truth, which we do, how do we handle lies and half-truths that are flung at us? Again, we can be reactive. We can contribute to the divisiveness that is occurring. Or we can investigate for ourselves. We can search for the temporal truth as assiduously as we search for the eternal truths. This search requires a commitment to objective investigation and the use of our intellect to analyze what we find. Discernment. It requires our discernment. As we accept the challenge that is being presented to us today, we are moving toward the light. The word enlightenment is generally used in terms of a total awakening of consciousness, similar to what occurred with the Buddha. However, that immediate awakening is not likely to happen for most of us. From my perspective, the journey we are trying to walk, the path that we are walking, this is a process. This is the path to enlightenment. And the further we walk on this path, the closer we move toward the light, toward enlightenment. Today, each of us has a choice and an opportunity. Will we accept the challenge presented to us by the world in which we live? Will we choose to live with the status quo? Allow divisiveness, systemic injustice, unconscious bias, lies, and half-truths to surround us? Will we put our ethics into practice? Will we accept the challenge that we are being handed? Can we move forward to transform ourselves and therefore transform the world? We are standing on the precipice of global and human transformation. How will we respond? For what will we stand? Will we move into the light and bring humanity with us? I believe we will, because we have the strength and the courage. We can have faith, and we can trust that we are all moving toward the light. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Take care and be safe.